afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Hampton, the Robo Recruiter, on behalf of David James and myself. And we have here today a very special guest. You know, you've heard the expression, the jack of all trades, master of none. But today I would say that we have a master of all as well. So without further ado, Sam Simmons, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, David, for having me. Really excited to be here. Awesome,
man. So as you, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the podcast, and as we discussed before, I mean, this is really about understanding kind of your narrative, your journey into this world, this crazy up and down world, and I just want to turn it over. So, I mean, speaking of that, let's just jump right into it, Sam. I mean, tell me about yourself in terms of how you came to be from if I recall, you're from California, right? From Poway. And
that's right.
And then you've somehow ventured off to the Sin City, and you've called that home now, Las Vegas. So kind of fill in the gap for me, man. Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, I could go on a while on this because it's been a wild, weird journey to get myself here. But I'll kind of try to give the cliff notes to spare our viewers who are watching this. So yeah, I was born and raised in San Diego. Went to college out at University of San Diego. I actually moved to Vegas just after graduating to get into real estate, of all things, despite this being a crypto podcast. And then I ended up, shortly after getting into that business, I got to working for a media company here in Vegas, where I spent several years, and I was working in marketing and then content and production and basically all aspects of that business for those several years up to becoming president eventually, where I served for a couple of years. That company was called Poker Go. We basically did streaming, production, distribution of live poker tournaments and events. Obviously a great hub for that here in Vegas. Funny enough, I was just before this watching the show you did with Dutch Boyd, and there was a lot of conversation there about poker. And
did you play? Are you a player?
Yeah, I'm probably like I don't want to, I'm actually
you're like hey, maybe we should play. I don't play very much, right?
Yeah, well, I gotta downplay it to get the right spots. I still play a little bit, but it's just more of a passion thing more than it was work at that point in time. So I was there several years, and I was doing some angel investing during those years, dating back to 2018, 2019. Right around COVID hit, took a couple years off to do some consulting and advisory for a couple startups that I had invested in, just kind of on a passive, ongoing basis. I've been in crypto.
How did you? Sorry to interrupt, and sorry for the interruption, but this will be good segue points. How did you get in? Like, how did you decide to go in angel investing, or how did you get? Like, how did the segue happen to? I'm always curious about the bridging of, like, from here to there, that kind of thing. How did you go from angel investing to consulting for a couple of projects? It's just, you say that nonchalantly, but it takes work, and it takes something like more than just just being somewhere. So how did that happen?
It's not something I can necessarily put my finger on. To be honest, I was a little bit behind the eight ball on like traditional investing, like managing a stock portfolio, and even to this day, the retail investing stuff has really picked up steam amongst younger demographics, and I just never really took a liking to it. I really enjoyed angel investing and getting on the ground floor of exciting businesses early, and frankly, I saw it as a much higher upside opportunity. I was very blessed to have had the opportunity to have a lot of different opportunities come across my plate in my line of work in the media space, just being able to connect with a lot of times like high net worth individuals or just very smart founder type folks that were looking for capital in their early goings of creating their business. So I got into things that way. And then, like I mentioned with the Poker Go stuff, there was just, I had, again, the blessing and privilege of being able to, very early in my career, manage a lot of aspects of a very complicated business, for lack of a better way of thinking about it, between producing 100 days of live poker, producing original programming, juxtaposed next to that live streaming, building out social gaming products, building out a SVOD service. So all these different things kind of was a whirlwind of experience that on the other side of it became valuable to various startups that I had invested in. So just kind of, and again, it was always for me kind of a temporary thing of not knowing what the next step was. So to bide my time and kind of get my feet wet with, and ultimately help out the investments that I had previously made on the angel side, just was dabbling with different things. And then from there, really happened upon the crypto stuff. So getting to the meat and potatoes of this actual conversation, I got into crypto back in 17 or 18, but like a lot of people, it was very passive, seeing headline news about the crazy price appreciation of Bitcoin and Ethereum and so on. Obviously got the FOMO kicked in and wanted to take part. I believe it was early to the middle of 2018. The party came to an end very quickly.
The 3,000 mark, when you're like, "Hey, time to get in. I got something."
Yeah, exactly. And it ultimately, you know, I was there for like the tail end of the upswing, and then for the crash that followed, I guess. And I never really, you know, my involvement was insofar as checking prices on a once every few days type of basis. It was always a long-term hold for me. It wasn't like I didn't buy Bitcoin and say like, wow, this is the future. It was, you know, I hope to make money off of this. And that's all I cared about in terms of my involvement. Now, that changed right around the time, I guess it was early last year, while I was doing some of the investing advisory stuff on the side, kind of trying to figure out my next thing, again, biding my time. I happened upon NFTs, and that was a big game changer for me in what I boiled down to, like the psychological aspects of digital ownership. And, you know, my background is in the media space. My job was to create stories, create content, and ultimately use that as a mechanism to deliver value to a community of like-minded people, in this case, that were passionate about poker. And there was always a disconnect to me between content publisher and content consumer, whether that be in a digital streaming world of just having the anonymous sort of, 10,000 viewers watching on Twitch, or even worse, the TV world of being judged by your TV ratings, which aren't even, there's nothing scientific to that.
Like,
it's just
no
like a survey.
Work, man. Like, it's like, it's like, yeah, okay. And I find it funny how CBS is like #1 viewing programming in the world. It's like, okay, if you say so, sure.
It's about as far from an exact science as you can get, but everything is contingent upon it. So it's like that disconnect always was odd to me, but it was just the nature of the beast and the world that we lived in. But NFTs, in a number of ways, you know, I'll say first, I bought in before fully understanding it, which I don't recommend now that I'm a little bit more experienced in this stuff. I don't recommend anyone, but that's what I did.
You lost some and you won some, right? I mean, you're a poker player. You win some, you lose some, right? You know, sometimes even when you call and you're supposed to win, you lose, right? So I don't know anything about poker. That's what I heard. So.
But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. There's been ups and downs along the way, but ultimately for me, it was about buying that first NFT, which was, for anyone that knows, the Gutter Cat Gang was the project, and having something that was unique to me, having this one-of-one, not only symbol of my digital identity, but the community that I associate with, and then seeing other community members welcome, embrace me just for the digital identity that I put forward, was a very special thing. And there's more to it than that, obviously, but that really was the catalyst to me. Like, okay, there's something here. I felt something buying an NFT. I never felt anything buying Bitcoin. That was for the purposes of price go up.
Yeah, this is pragmatic. Like, so in other words, like, I mean, I think what you're talking about is like, you know, C.S. Lewis said the greatest human desire we have as humans is to belong. So in essence, I mean, in such a way, to me, what you're saying, what's speaking to me is like, you're saying, hey, I felt like I belonged. It was something that like, oh, like it was it's like a gravitational pull, and then everyone else who was in there was also it was common gravity per se.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a unique phenomenon to me. So it wasn't necessarily one that had me quit everything right away, but I spent a lot of time from there doing a little trading on the side, degenning a little bit, if you will, but really getting into the nuts and bolts of the technology. Like, okay, like let's backtrack a bit. Blockchain isn't new, but now I need to figure out what this is built upon. So like let's get into the weeds of like blockchain technologies, cryptography. How does this all work? What is an NFT? What can it resemble? What are the use cases for NFTs? And I basically spent 3 or 4 months making up for lost time as quickly as I could in my off hours. And then middle to late part of last year, ended up saying, you know what, F it. I don't really know where this goes, but I'm going to get into the space full time. I believe in this to be the future based upon my studies, and I'm willing to bet my career on this. So that's been the past year plus for me, is really the core of it goes back to
since last September? essentially?
Last-ish, yeah. About late September, early October is when this all started for me. So maybe a little bit less than a year, but about a year or so.
Okay.
So what I really have positioned sort of my role in all of this as is, with the background from the media space, my focus is on through my little like consultancy project, Non-Fungibly Curious. It's around making NFTs approachable. Like, it sounds very audacious from the outside looking in, seeing these major headlines of these Bored Apes and how much they're selling for, crypto punks and the ridiculousness of it all. But the actual use case around IP holders and how they can engage, connect with, create experiences for their fans digitally by way of NFT technologies, that's where my focus lies. And then in tandem with that, I'm also working with a longtime business partner who's raising a venture fund right now called Dream Ventures on bringing in Web3 projects, basically. So everyone, like whatever the future is going to be in Web3, I spend half my time trying to identify those up and coming businesses, I suppose, projects we call them in Web3, and being a part of those.
Do you, in terms of that, are you guys involved with like helping them augment their hiring team? They're getting the right people in there. Are you guys like highly involved with that part of the process in the startups?
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, I think that is ultimately one of the biggest challenges at that stage. Like, the best case scenario for a startup business is that you see this growth beyond expected, but with that growth becomes problems with the inherent problems with scaling of needing to fill in your team to match that demand or match that scaling growth. But oftentimes, especially in a specialist industry like blockchain technologies and some of the partners that we're working with, those aren't positions that are easy to fill. And in fact, even more so if you fill those positions incorrectly with the wrong people because you're doing so a bit hastily. And I think of it as like changing the wheels on a moving car, where like if you put on the wrong size wheel, the car's going off the track. So it's a very important thing, and we try to help out as much as we can with that and other aspects. But ultimately, that's kind of where we position ourselves as a VC, is like, we want to be involved as our founders want us to be, because some founders are going to be more like, leave me the hell alone, let me go build. Some will be, hey, we need your help along the way. So it just depends.
So are you guys, I mean, I'm kind of treading the line between venture capital versus like a venture studio, right? Like in the difference being, for those who may not know, like a venture studio is kind of doing like, 3 things in one. It's like the incubation idea part, the operator part, coming in and helping like, actually incorporate what they know operationally. And then also, what everybody needs, which is the capital, right? And I asked that because I'm fascinated by the VC world. I'm fascinated by the startup world. I'm fascinated by recruiting, right? As you know, I mean, that's what we do as well. And so I asked from the vantage point of like, there's the fourth prong of that. If you ask me in terms of a venture studio, would be like, okay, how are you guys augmenting the hiring or the enrolling? There's like this, not kind of a term that, I would say, what's between like enrolling and hiring, right? And the thing is about hiring versus enrolling, and I'll ask you about this because I think it's an interesting philosophical question. Is you can go out and say, hey, we'll pay you to do this job, okay, but that doesn't make them want to do the job that you need done in a certain way that you expect them to do it or want them to do it. So talk to me about like, and I'm putting you in the spot in this regard, because I mean I know it's gonna be a fluid conversation. I told you this, right? But what are your thoughts on like being like the founders who can enroll versus like the conundrum of hiring the right people per se? Like how do you view that? Like how does that?
So it's a fascinating question. It's actually very timely for me personally, as I'm trying to get better about reading, but really for me it's audiobooks. But my big sort of theme right now is around motivation, and in particular gamification of your life, and like how you can find intrinsic motivation and how that is more of a motivating factor than extrinsic motivation. So you can put together the sexiest comp package for an early stage hire, but that's not going to be necessarily what it takes to actually, so to speak, to like in terms of buying into the vision, get them to drink the Kool-Aid and do the job in a way that does justice to the startup itself. So it's a tricky thing, and it's not. My answer is a non-answer in that it's just a challenge. And it's something that I look for actually, like when we're looking at when we're listening to pitches and stuff, because to your point, you kind of project out like a founder's passion, their vision onto not only a pitch that they give you, but then how they deliver that to hiring out their C-suite or employee number 1, 2, as they go along their journey. Where if you as an investor, no matter how good the idea is, if you can't be convinced of their vision, of their passion for what they're building, and perhaps in some cases it may seem as like, well, there's a white space in the market, so we're going to go pursue it. Like that doesn't get me excited, but like this is my baby, this is my dream, this is how I want to change the world. If you then flip that and think about yourself as a prospective hire to an early stage organization like that, to me, I'm a lot more drawn into the second one, which is not necessarily I'm going to go make a lot of money by taking up this white space in the market. Here's your comp package to do the ABC of what I need you to do. I want to follow the guy that's trying to change the world. And that's obviously a very abstract sort of, almost like a WeWork type of vision. But you kind of get what I'm saying.
It's a really good example. I mean, because here's the thing. I mean, this you know, my background being in psychology, and I didn't know that having studied psychology, that I would do what I do on a daily basis. I love what I do. And you know, but the thing is like when it comes to recruiting motivation, I think when it comes down to enrolling and hiring, I think it comes down to really truly understanding people's motivations. And that sounds basic, but I mean, really, what I'm going back to is there was a test called the thematic apperception test, and it's dated back to 1950s. So we're talking like over 70 years ago, right? And it was a projection test. It's a projective test that they use in batteries to see if someone is insane or not, or competent to stand trial. This is, I mean, not to bore you with that stuff, but it's interesting to me. So you take that thematic apperception test, which is a projective test, and what it simply did is they showed you these picture cards, and they said tell me a story. Okay, after a number of cards were shown to the patients or to people, they noticed the themes that evolved from that. The 3 major themes that, if you think about it, are that evolve, are that motivate people are power, achievement, and affiliation. Okay, now I think that as we go through different seasons of our life, those things they permeate and they change, right? One becomes more important than the other. And I mean, these have been used to you know, these basic concepts have been used to like also provide leadership profiles of State of Union, like state leaders dating back 1945. So we're talking, I mean, it's not made up. It's just that like now you take that concept and and doing this on a daily basis in terms of enrolling or hiring, however you want to think about it, like understanding why. To me, it comes down to, okay, what are you wanting to get something done really well? Are you wanting to like rise to the top? Or are you wanting to like feel like you're part of something that's bigger than yourself with the people that you want to do it with? And that's the simplistic way of like of those 3 themes, you know, but usually one is driving, right? And you know, usually, and money is usually a part of it in terms of the power, because the power comes with the money, right? So the achievement, you know, you can associate money as well, because if you get to a certain point, you expect the money, but not always. You know, you can be a high level CEO at a nonprofit, you may not be getting a lot of money, but you're doing so. But I appreciate I appreciate that, because
it's an interesting thing, because like and I now that you're talking about it, like it's almost, because this is from me at the outside looking in, like you obviously you talk about masters and whatnot to kick off this session here. You're the masters of recruiting with blockchain recruiters. So
you're too kind.
But I on my end, like whenever I would think about recruitment, it's like you're looking for the right person for the business that's a client of yours. But at the same time, it's about finding the right business for the person, depending on what of that triangle of needs they have as a potential employee. And it's into like the venture stuff, that it starts from the beginning when you're even having conversations with founding teams. Like you probably, I'm now already in my head thinking about some of the companies that we've worked with closely, and you kind of start to put together this picture of like, you have the founder who's the face, and maybe that is, call it call it they want the fame of it all. I forget what word you use, but something like they want to be the front man, the lead singer of the band. You have the person behind the scenes, perhaps the COO, who's more about the power and control of the organization. And then you kind of have the behind the scenes techier person who fills a role as well. Like you have to have those boxes checked. And if you have two that maybe are wanting the same things and have the potential to create friction against one another, or maybe both wanted to be the front person or both wanted to have decision-making control, that's where you encounter issues. So it's as much as, in the venture stuff, you're trying to make decisions based upon ROI, you also got to become a little bit of a psychologist there to figure out like, all right, does the team mesh well? Do they have the respective backgrounds and the priorities that are going to make it all work in the long term?
Indeed. No, well said. I mean, that's kind of, I mean, that's why there's, this dates back to the personality testing, and that was it's been so relevant as of recent, because I mean I've had a lot of clients who use a certain personality test. Hey, we want to see what their DISC score is, right? DISC, and they see how that is, and the idea is because they want to see how this person scores, so they can mesh someone who would fit that personality as well on a small team, right? That's the whole idea. What happens is that as much as that's an ideal situation, they don't end up using the DISC or the personality testing to pair up or to team up the right teams together, because they're like, oh yeah, that's just part of our process, and they get because what happens is as you get bigger, right, it's part of those processes that you're like, oh yeah, this is to make sure we're hiring the right people the entire time. But if you're not meshing the right teams together, then that's gonna there'll be create factions, and so that becomes a long-term issue in terms of like, what do you think? But anyways, we digress in that regard. So Sam, I mean, you've talked about like, you got Non-Fungibly Curious, right? You got your what's your VC firm that you guys are partnering up right now? What are you guys doing?
Dream Ventures is what it's called.
Dream Ventures.
We make our founders' dreams reality. We like to say it's our cheesy tagline,
Awesome.
but we roll with it. And then I'm also under sort of the umbrella of the Non-Fungibly Curious stuff and working with IP holders on creating NFT collections. I'm also operating chief strategy officer at NFT Stadium, which is basically a marketplace and launch platform for sports and gaming, on launching NFT collections that create fan experiences, a lot like what I mentioned earlier. So yeah, okay. It's been a lot of fun. It's like half of it's like the operational, like actually creating and launching project side of things. The other half is very macro of, keeping high level on the investing side and trying to monitor trends. So it can be overwhelming at times, but never a dull day. That's for sure. That's
awesome. Well, and so here, I mean, so for those who are listening, I mean, go ahead and tell them where you can be reached. Whatever email address or whatever website you want to put on. Say you can say it all if you want. I don't mind that.
Yeah, sure. So the best place to reach me is on LinkedIn. Under Sam Simmons on LinkedIn. I toe the line between the business suit and the NFT degenerate a little bit. So like my LinkedIn is kind of like where business is, and then my Twitter is where the party is. I go by Jimmy Swag NFT over there.
All right.
And you'll find a very different persona than what you'll see on LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, it's I like to toe the line, and ultimately, catch me there. Email is sam@nfvs.io. Any of the above, feel free to reach out.
That's Sam at N as in November, F as in Foxtrot, V as in Victor, S as in Sierra, as in Sierra Mountains, and .com. Is that correct?
.io. You almost had it.
Excuse me. .io. All right. Just checking to see if you guys are listening.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sam, appreciate your time. And I'm gonna sign off here with you, and just thank you so much, man. For David James, as he would say, get whispered. I'm not saying it like he would say. And for myself, I'm eternally grateful, and every day's a gift. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, everyone.